The New Hampshire Preservation Alliance welcomes this annual opportunity to recognize outstanding projects and people, offer thanks, and inspire others. Since 1989, our awards have recognized individuals, organizations, and corporations for work or projects in the categories of restoration and stewardship, rehabilitation and adaptive use, compatible new construction, public policy, and educational and planning initiatives. Selection criteria include the significance of the resource, quality of work, the degree of challenge, innovation or accomplishment, and the level of community support for the project. Construction projects are evaluated against the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation.
Call Carolyn Baldwin now. For over 40 years, those active in environmental protection, land conservation, and historic preservation have turned to Carolyn for advice. Her contributions have been made through her legal practice and as an educator and inspiration to an expanding group of practitioners and advocates, as well as a leader on numerous heritage and conservation boards and committees. New Hampshire owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to Carolyn for helping to steer local and statewide practice away from demolition or short-sighted development and towards recognizing and protecting New Hampshire's natural and historic resources, which she sees as two sides of the same coin. She was an early advocate of investment that enhances those assets for the good of our communities and our state. She helped shape the preservation movement, and her work continues to help it expand and thrive. After working in special collections at the University of Chicago Library and as an archivist at the New Hampshire Historical Society in the early 1970s, Carolyn made a bold move to study law. She graduated from Franklin Pierce Law Center and was one of the first 100 women admitted to the New Hampshire bar. In 1978, she created the Environmental Law Clinic at the Law Center and became its director until she established her own practice in 1983. That practice evolved into BCM Environmental and Land Use Law, PLLC, in 2012. While at the Historical Society, Carolyn wrote several recommendations for the Bicentennial Meeting House project, visiting such sites as Strawberry Bank and the Exeter Town Hall, as well as the 1823 Belknap Mill in Laconia, only recently rescued from urban renewal demolition. The mill was ultimately chosen as the Meeting House of New Hampshire, giving it visibility and credibility. It was one of the state's first industrial buildings to be adaptively reused, a direction that is commonplace today. 25 years later, her rescue from the wrecking ball, along with Jeff Taylor, Wallace Rhodes, and Chris Williams, of the historic Belmont Mill with an 11th hour injunction, is still held up as one of the pivotal moments in New Hampshire preservation history. A few years later, she was at it again, helping to save the home of orator and statesman Daniel Webster in Franklin. On the municipal planning and investment front, Carolyn has been the critical leader for New Hampshire historic preservation legislation, implementation, and interpretation, including historic districts and heritage commissions. In 1980, she was the supervising editor of the Handbook for Establishing and Administering Historic Districts, and she continues to contribute to its successor publications. She played a key role in establishing new tools like the Barn Tax Relief Program in neighborhood heritage areas as well. One of Carolyn's major legal victories for historic preservation was Victorian Realty Group versus City of Nashua in 1987. The New Hampshire Supreme Court unanimously affirmed that the district commissions are uniquely suited to provide recommendations to municipal planning boards. The ruling remains a clear assertion that historic district commissions can help planning boards implement a community's objective to safeguard its historic districts. Over the years, Carolyn has been a popular and effective presenter for the New Hampshire Bar, Municipal Association, Preservation Alliance, and many others. And she has helped 2 generations of attorneys, volunteer boards, property owners, and advocates. Carolyn's engagement extends to her hometown's heritage and conservation efforts and to her personal life, too. She's helped preserve community landmarks, including Gilmanton's First Baptist Church and Kelly Corner School. She and her husband Peter also donated a conservation easement on their 105-acre historic property in Gilmanton to the Five Rivers Conservation Trust. And as a board member of the Gilmanton Land Trust, helped conserve Meeting House Pond and adjacent farmland and the Flax Redding Pond. If Carolyn were a goddess, her nominator wrote, she would be Athena, goddess of wisdom and heroic endeavor, and also the ultimate but successful resort of the helpless. The New Hampshire Preservation Alliance is pleased to honor this investment by Bill Bartlett that revived a vacant community landmark for use as a small business in Plastow. The old Boston and Maine depot, built in 1869, was a vital part of Plastow's growth for almost a century. It was one of 3 stations in this southern New Hampshire village during that era. Tickets were sold at the depot for travel south to Boston or northeast to Portland. The most popular destinations were Haverhill and Boston, Massachusetts. After the railroad stopped running, the building was used as a boys' club, and then by local contractor Alden Palmer for his masonry business. Then it sat vacant, accumulating graffiti, with a leaking roof, a flooded basement, and an uncertain future. Enter contractor Bill Bartlett. A Plastow native, Bartlett had hung around the boys' club when he was too young to be an official member. Maybe he even snuck in. After pursuing the building's owner for many years, Bartlett finally made a deal with the owner's heirs. He purchased the historic former Plastow Railroad Depot on Main Street, repaired the outside of the building, and rehabilitated the inside for his daughter Tiffany's commercial children's photographic studio. Plastow Historical Society members, led by historian James Peck, provided research and cheerleading along the way. Here is a sense of the scope of preservation work. After cleaning out the depot, a team of electricians, carpenters, and others began work in earnest. Retaining original materials and features was a top priority. One of the first jobs was to reshingle the roof to make it watertight. That was done without replacing much of the wood, but floor joists had rotted from moisture problems, and they were largely replaced in kind. On the track side, due to deterioration and graffiti, the outside wood siding was repaired and replaced with the same size boards. The exterior was painted in its original depot buff and maroon colors. Inside, a lot of the original materials had already been removed, so Bartlett returned chair rail and wainscoting, restoring as many windows as possible. He added a bathroom, kitchenette, septic, and made the building ADA accessible. Lastly, a new Plastow sign, the same size as the original, was affixed to the south wall in the original white lettering on dark blue background and made of the same porcelain. This popular and ubiquitous building type lends itself to continuing and new uses. The revived station in Plastow is now part of an important portfolio of similar success stories, like the Senior Center in the rehabilitated B&M station in Plymouth and local historical society rescues and revitalizations of depots in Lisbon and Ashland. However, many depots are very vulnerable. The Preservation Alliance is concerned about other railroad structures around the state, like this one in Ossipee. Please join us in supporting Tiffany Cook's photography studio, housed in Plastow's restored depot, or just take a walk by. All aboard for investments in historic buildings for small businesses.
This complex project by the Venerable Historical Society of Cheshire County reimagined the use of its beloved 1762 tavern building as the society repositions itself for the future. With a strong design and construction team, it met varied public and institutional needs with sound planning, rehabilitation and restoration of the tavern, and an adjacent historic building. The trustees faced the challenge of preserving Wyman Tavern while addressing growing space needs head-on when they developed the Society's 5-year strategic plan in 2012. They recognized, as have other successful historical societies across America, that people support organizations that are vital and provide continuing benefits that suit present needs. The master plan that followed included evaluating the tavern and the Society's headquarters at the Ball Mansion, as well as determining the long-term archival storage needs. After examining options, the Society purchased the Bruder House from Keene State College, converting the second floor into archival storage and creating a first-floor visitor center for the next-door Wyman Tavern. This allowed for only minimal renovations to the tavern. Built in the Georgian style, the tavern was in operation as a public house for 40 years. The trustees of Dartmouth College met at the tavern to hold their first meeting in 1770. 5 years later, 29 Minutemen gathered at the tavern to march to Lexington. In 1968, the building became the Society's historic house museum after being a private home for 170 years. LCHIP funded high-quality restoration work at the Wyman Tavern included repairs to all major exterior elements, with minor renovations to the L, not original to the building. The design construction team installed a platform lift to provide accessibility to the first floor. A new heating and cooling system and electrical systems were carefully installed with minimal disturbance to the historic fabric of the building. Work on the exterior of the 1839 Bruder House included repairs to the slate roof, repointing all exterior brickwork, restoring the main entrance door and side lights and painting. An existing porch on the south side of the building was repaired, and a new porch was constructed on the north side of the building, overlooking the tavern. Site work included a new patio and walkway leading to the tavern. A new wood fence visually unifies the two properties. A new timber frame pavilion features an exterior brick fireplace and oven for 18th century cooking demonstrations. Comprehensive rehabilitation work also included adapting the first floor into an accessible meeting room, visitor center, toilet rooms, and food preparation kitchen. It had previously been renovated into housing for Keene State College students, and very little of the original interior fabric of the building remained. Walnut trees had to be removed from both properties for this project, and the Bruder House walnut floors are a character-defining element. In keeping with this project's strong commitment to preservation and education, the trees were cut and milled on site, kiln-dried, and milled into floorboards, which were then installed in the meeting room and gift shop. The entire process was documented and is used as a teaching experience. An example of excellence repeated again and again in this project. Just a mile away from the Weirs Beach Drive-In is a rare and significant landmark of the Lakes region's agricultural history, the over 160-acre Prescott Farm. This award recognizes the commitment and stewardship of the nonprofit Prescott Conservancy, which has owned it for over 2 decades and operates it as the Prescott Farm Environmental Education Center. The Prescott Farm staff and board of directors have worked closely with the Pardoe family, descendants of the original Prescott family, to ensure that the land and historically significant structures are available for public use and education. This collaboration offers a thoughtful, innovative model with organizational and environmental sustainability at its heart. Prescott Farm's mission is to instill appreciation for the natural world and preservation efforts for the Laconia community and beyond. A recent extensive 4-year barn preservation project is a symbol of this, and a central place for the nonprofit's very active and effective youth and adult programs. Originally deeded to the Prescott family in 1790 through a Revolutionary War land grant, the property remained a working farm until the mid-1960s. The Big House, Little House, Back House barn connected architecture includes an 1883 main structure and a dairy structure. The connected barns were suffering from typical big-scale drainage, rot, and maintenance problems. A professional assessment of the buildings led to a comprehensive barn restoration project. The team, led by preservation contractor Ian Blackman, restored the original timber frame of the barn using high-quality preservation practice. He and others note that the resetting of the stone foundation was a wonderful, exceptional commitment by the organization. The preservation team also extended the main barn floor across the open space where hay was once stored, making the barn space nearly twice as big. This new, functional space provides much-needed room for camps, school field trips, and public programs. While working on the barns, Ian Blackman also conducted 3 sold-out Preservation Alliance workshops to educate barn owners and enthusiasts throughout the region. Attendees learned about the benefits of careful planning, as well as traditional techniques. Many attendees reported that they felt inspired by the workshop and ready to take on challenges at their own properties. The family foundation started by the Pardoe family, as well as other Lakes Region community members, supported the barn preservation venture and has been working hand in hand with the nonprofit on organizational and environmental sustainability. The Pardoe family has made an extraordinary commitment to this place and the Laconia region, said Jennifer Goodman, Executive Director of the Preservation Alliance. This award salutes that partnership commitment and encourages more. The structure will see active use and stand for another century, not only a grand symbol of farming, hard work, and community, but also a place where people of all ages can find connection to New Hampshire history and the natural world. Worried about who is going to step up to advocate for the next generation of preservation challenges? This award winner will give you hope. A group of Girl Scouts in Wolfboro has successfully advocated for reusing a long vacant electric generation building owned by the town, sparking interest in its future. The award recognizes their blue ribbon strategies and tenacity promoting a building type that tends to be overlooked. They are certainly a model for others. Wolfboro's municipal electric building, a brick structure erected in 1897 and expanded in 1937, has been vacant and used for storage since 2008. Next to it stands the old fire station, repurposed decades ago as a community meeting space, but now outdated and at times unusable. The topic of rehabilitating these 2 buildings had been a simmering concern for the town when the girls approached the Director of Public Works, Dave Ford, and asked him about doing a project. The municipal electric building was a great fit, and he guided their work in the direction of a community center proposal. Calling themselves the Electric Llamas, the double L relates to Lego League. They took it and ran with it, talking to lots of other people who could help, learning a CAD program, making a cardboard model of the building, and preparing lots of presentation materials. The Scouts secured signatures for a petitioned warrant article for the March 2020 town ballot and made several public presentations to share their ideas and the benefit of this effort, wearing their bright yellow t-shirts imprinted with their project name. Community support was strong, and the warrant article passed during March 10th voting, appropriating $25,000 for a feasibility reuse study. A planned New Hampshire charrette will look at this area as a parallel effort to enhancing the electric building and the surrounding areas on Leaner Street. The Electric Llamas join a special group of New Hampshire Youth Award winners who have adopted landmark buildings and made a substantial difference in their revival. The Lighthouse Kids fundraised for the White Island Light. The Fairground Junior High School Club in Nashua drove public awareness and planning for an industrial gatehouse building in Mine Falls Park. Back in Wolfboro, the Town Heritage Commission endorsed the Electric Llama's efforts and was heartened to see the younger generation become involved in the reuse of significant community buildings. Since the award-winning rehabilitation of the Town Hall after years of uncertainty, leadership in town is strongly pro-preservation, and this project has a high likelihood of succeeding as well, especially with the buy-in and creativity of these young women.
Arnold M. Graton's work has helped shape the public's understanding and acceptance of the preservation of historic bridges and other structures in New Hampshire. He is considered one of the most influential timber frame craftsmen in the United States. Arnold's portfolio features nearly 100 new, restored, and repaired bridges, as well as significant residential, commercial, and institutional landmarks. According to architectural historian James Garvin and others, Mr. Graton is the most experienced covered bridge specialist alive today. Arnold got his start with his dad, Milton Graton. During the flood control programs of the 1950s, the Graton's construction company was hired to remove covered bridges in a floodplain. Arnold remembers, "When asked to relocate one of these historic structures, my father and I often had to give the bridge a little additional support before the move could take place." Arnold and his father built their first covered bridge in Campton, New Hampshire, and Arnold has continued repairing, restoring, building, and innovating ever since, for almost 7 decades. Graton is a problem solver and a careful steward, not just of bridges, but of old barns, museums, churches, and other historic landmarks as well. Even historic fire towers and huts for hikers in remote locations, and, recently, the Mayflower II, a replica of the ship that carried the Pilgrims to New England. Some of Arnold's favorite projects through the years are the 1971 construction of the 150-foot-long New England College covered bridge in Henniker, the first all-wood covered bridge built in the state using traditional methods since 1907. Guam Covered Bridge in Ashland, which was the last bridge he worked on with his dad. A replica of the Corbin Covered Bridge in Newport, a 158-year-old span destroyed by arsonists in May 1993. The state-owned 1889 Kentucky Covered Railroad Bridge, the oldest covered railroad bridge in the United States. And construction of a new covered bridge for exhibition at the Smithsonian Institution's 1999 Folklife Festival in Washington, D.C., a festival that was later represented in Hopkinton. Graton is a superb craftsman in wood and is an expert rigger and building mover. He believes in and uses traditional timber framing and bridge building techniques. He prefers hand tools to power machinery, has pulled structures into place with oxen, and cinches together the framing with long wooden pegs called trunnels, which his team mills by hand. Graton is loved and respected by clients. They admire his work ethic and the way he solves problems. Whether it's hauling materials and people to remote places like a trail on Tuckerman's Ravine, dealing with complicated load issues on a bridge, moving the historic brick cable house in Durham, or tackling a difficult shoring and leveling job during a great revival of the Eagle Block in Newport. He is a man of few words but keen intelligence. Arnold's team of his wife Meg and stepson Tim Dansereau, along with Don Walker, has played a significant role in Arnold's success for many years. Arnold's son, J.R. Graton, also works independently on preservation projects throughout the Granite State. New Hampshire is so fortunate to have Arnold Graton as a link to the past and a modern-day pioneer for the future.